sometimes.
So about, I made my own song in camp when I was at Job Corps. Gobble, gobble, swallow, swallow, spit, spit, bitch. Y'all think I'm playing.
Bitch, you don't shut up.
Oh yeah, it's just a fire.
Bitch, I don't need this.
April 24th, 2025. Afton, Missouri. Inside a quiet home on Whispering Oak Place. A 25-year-old woman is arguing with her 21-year-old boyfriend. The fight turns physical. He punches her. She turns to a witness in the room and says the words that will haunt everyone who hears them. "Call 911. I'm scared he's going to get his gun." The witness pulls out their phone, starts dialing. Bang. Before the call even connects, a gunshot rings out. Kelsey Elem collapses. Her boyfriend, Martino Lewis, runs out of the house, jumps into her car, and flees the scene. He leaves her bleeding on the floor, dying, alone. Paramedics rush Kelsey to the hospital, but it's too late. She's pronounced dead shortly after arrival. This wasn't just a domestic dispute gone wrong. This was the deadly culmination of a secret relationship. A relationship where Martino dated Kelsey in private but refused to acknowledge her in public. Because Kelsey Elem was a transgender woman, and Martino Lewis was terrified of what it would mean if anyone knew. Disclaimer: this story discusses violence against a transgender woman and the dangers of shame-based relationships. We tell Kelsey's story to honor her life and demand justice. Before the headlines reduced her to a victim, before her life became a cautionary tale about the dangers trans women face in the dating world, Kelsey Elem was simply living. Born and raised in Missouri, Kelsey came into this world like any child, full of hope, light, and the promise of a future that should have been long and bright. Her mother, Calvinita Brock, described Kelsey as soft-spoken, loving, and deeply intuitive. Even as a young child, Kelsey carried a quiet wisdom. She saw the world differently than others. She felt things more deeply. And from a young age, Kelsey knew something that would shape the rest of her life. The world didn't see her the way she saw herself. Kelsey was assigned male at birth. But her soul, her spirit, her entire sense of self told a different story. And in her late teens, Kelsey made the brave decision to transition. Not just physically, but emotionally, socially, spiritually. It wasn't easy. Transition never is. Kelsey faced rejection from people who should have supported her. She dealt with threats, isolation, judgment, but she kept moving forward. She didn't ask for permission to exist. She simply did. Being a Black transgender woman in America is already dangerous. As according to advocacy groups, trans women, especially Black trans women, face disproportionately high rates of violence, discrimination, and murder. They are targeted, fetishized, silenced, and erased. But Kelsey refused to be erased. She lived openly. She posted on social media. She did her hair, took selfies, shared inspirational quotes. She was radiant in every picture. Not because she was trying to prove anything, but because she'd already done the hardest thing anyone could do. She became herself. Kelsey wasn't just surviving. She was thriving. She was actively training to become a certified nursing assistant. She had dreams of helping others, of building a career, of creating a life on her own terms. Her mother said Kelsey had recently started talking about long-term goals again, proof that she was planning for tomorrow, and believing in a future. And like so many people, Kelsey wanted love. She wanted what everyone wants: to be seen, to be valued, to have something real with someone who wasn't ashamed of her. But finding love as a transgender woman meant navigating a minefield. It meant dealing with men who wanted her in private, but disowned her in public. Men who told her, "I like you, but no one else can know." Kelsey knew what it felt like to be a secret. And when she met Martino Lewis, she hoped maybe this time would be different. It wasn't. When Kelsey Elem met Martino Lewis, it started the way many modern relationships do, through social media. Casual DMs, mutual friends, flirtation that slowly built into something more. Martino was 21 years old, 4 years younger than Kelsey. He wasn't flashy or loud. In fact, he was quiet, low profile, the kind of guy who preferred to stay in the background, comfortable in shadows. On paper, Martino seemed like a regular young man. No criminal record, no history of violence, nothing that raised immediate red flags. But there was something Kelsey had learned to watch for in the men she dated. The willingness to be public. The ability to claim her, not just in private, but in front of the world. And from the beginning, Martino kept Kelsey hidden. He never posted about her on social media, never introduced her to his family or friends. When they were together in public, which was rare, they weren't really together. He kept distance, acted like they were just acquaintances. But when they were alone, that's when he came alive. That's when he was affectionate, attentive, tender. That's when he acted like she mattered. And Kelsey, like so many women starving for real connection, convinced herself that maybe this was just how it had to be. That if she stayed patient, he'd eventually overcome his fear. That the shame would fade and they could be open like everyone else. But the truth is, Martino wasn't just cautious, he was terrified. He was terrified of what it would mean if people knew the woman he was dating was transgender. He was terrified of how it would look, what people would say, how it might affect his reputation. Society teaches young men, especially young black men, that their masculinity is fragile, that it can be shattered by who they love, that dating a trans woman makes you less of a man. Martino had internalized all of that. And instead of confronting those toxic beliefs, he chose secrecy. Secrecy isn't neutral. Secrecy is a cage. And eventually, both people inside suffocate. Over time, the dynamic between Kelsey and Martino began to shift. Kelsey, who'd spent her entire life fighting to be seen, was tired of hiding. She started pushing for more openness, more honesty, more acknowledgement. She wanted to be able to call him her boyfriend. She wanted him to post about her, introduce her to people, treat her like she mattered outside of four walls. But Martino wasn't ready. And the more Kelsey pushed, the more he pulled away. Friends later said they noticed a change in Kelsey around this time. She seemed heavier, more withdrawn. The woman who once posted affirmations and selfies with a bright smile was growing quieter. She confided in at least one friend that Martino had become unpredictable, that his temper was short, and that sometimes he'd disappear for days, then come back acting like nothing had happened. Other times, he'd show flashes of resentment, anger that seemed to rise from nowhere, then vanish just as fast. Kelsey wanted clarity. He gave her confusion. She wanted love. He gave her limits. And the more she asked for honesty, the more dangerous it became to ask. Experts who study intimate partner violence say this is a common pattern: isolation, emotional manipulation, control masked as affection, and the inability to handle rejection without rage. Martino wanted power. He wanted silence. He wanted control. And Kelsey wanted out. Not necessarily out of the relationship entirely, but out of the darkness, out of the hiding, out of the lies. She wasn't asking for too much, just to be seen, to be treated like someone who mattered. But in a relationship built on secrecy and shame, even asking for love can be seen as a threat. And by spring 2025, that threat was about to explode. April 24th, 2025 started like any other day in Afton, Missouri, a quiet suburb where nothing much happens, where people mind their business and keep to themselves. Inside the home on Whispering Oak Place, Kelsey and Martino were together. There was also a witness present, someone who would later provide crucial testimony about what happened. At some point that afternoon, Kelsey and Martino began arguing. We don't know exactly what started it. Maybe Kelsey was asking for more commitment. Maybe Martino was pulling away again. Maybe it was about something completely different. But whatever the topic, the argument escalated quickly. According to the witness, the fight turned physical. So Martino punched Kelsey during the argument. Kelsey, who'd been navigating toxic relationships and dangerous situations her entire adult life, immediately recognized the danger she was in. She turned to the witness and said words that would haunt everyone who heard them. "Call 911. I'm scared he's going to get his gun." Think about that. Kelsey knew Martino had a gun, and she knew, in that moment of fear and clarity, that he was capable of using it on her. The witness pulled out their phone and started dialing 911. Emergency services. Help. Someone who could stop this before it went too far. But before the call could even connect, a gunshot rang out. Bang! Martino had shot Kelsey. She collapsed, blood spreading across the floor, the witness screaming. Chaos erupting in a home that had been quiet just moments before. And Martino? He didn't check on Kelsey. He didn't wait for help. He didn't even hesitate. He ran out of the house, jumped into Kelsey's car, her car, and fled the scene, leaving her bleeding and dying on the floor. The 911 call that Kelsey had begged the witness to make finally connected. Paramedics were dispatched to the home on Whispering Oak Place. When they arrived, they found Kelsey Elem suffering from a gunshot wound. She was still alive, but barely. They immediately began life-saving measures, working frantically to stabilize her. She was rushed to the hospital where doctors took over, doing everything in their power to save the 25-year-old woman who'd fought so hard just to exist in a world that constantly tried to erase her. But the damage was too severe. Kelsey Elem was pronounced dead at the hospital. A daughter, a friend, a woman with dreams of becoming a nursing assistant, of helping others, of building a life on her own terms, dead at 25, killed by the man she'd been dating. The man who'd kept her hidden, the man who couldn't handle the truth of who she was. Meanwhile, Martino Lewis wasn't hiding. He was already trying to rewrite the narrative. According to court records, after fleeing the scene in Kelsey's car, Martino handed a firearm to another witness and spun a lie. He told them Kelsey had been shot while they were driving and that he'd rushed her to the hospital himself. But investigators quickly unraveled that story. It wasn't true. None of it. Martino hadn't rushed Kelsey anywhere. He'd shot her and run, leaving her to die while he tried to cover his tracks. Police tracked Martino down later that day in St. Louis City, and he was still in possession of Kelsey's car, the car he'd stolen after murdering her. When confronted by law enforcement, Martino admitted there had been a physical fight, but he offered no real explanation for what happened. No remorse, no accountability, just silence. Martino Lewis was arrested on April 24, 2025, the same day he killed Kelsey Elem. He was taken into custody and booked into St. Louis County Jail. The charges against him were serious: second-degree murder, armed criminal action, domestic assault. In Missouri, second-degree murder means an intentional killing without premeditation. It carries a sentence of 10 to 30 years or life in prison. Armed criminal action adds additional time. And the domestic assault charge acknowledges the violence that led up to the shooting. The punch, the argument, the pattern of control. But for Kelsey's family and for the LGBTQ community watching closely, there was fear. Would Kelsey get justice? Or would the court treat her, like so many other trans victims, as somehow less deserving of protection, less worthy of being avenged? Trans women, especially black trans women, are murdered at alarming rates, and their killers often receive lighter sentences if they're convicted at all. The justice system has a long history of failing trans victims. Martino appeared in early court hearings subdued, expressionless. His legal team offered little insight into motive, no emotional defense, no visible remorse. Just the tired suggestion that this was a domestic dispute gone wrong, an accident, heat of the moment. But Kelsey's family wasn't buying it. To them, this wasn't a moment. It was a build-up, and a slow simmer of resentment and shame that ended exactly the way they feared it would. Kelsey's mother, Calvinita Brock, devastated yet determined, spoke through her grief. "I'm still like I'm in a dream. This wasn't supposed to happen to her." But it did. Kelsey Elem's murder wasn't an isolated incident. It fits into a much larger, more disturbing pattern. According to advocacy organisations tracking anti-trans violence, transgender individuals, particularly trans women of colour, face epidemic levels of violence. In 2024 alone, dozens of trans people were murdered in the United States. Most were black or Latina trans women. Most were killed by intimate partners or people they knew. Most were under 35 years old. Kelsey was 25. She fits the pattern perfectly, and the motive in many of these cases is the same: shame. Now, men who date trans women in secret often experience what's called the trans panic defense, a claim that discovering someone is transgender justifies violence. It's a legal argument that's been used successfully in some jurisdictions to reduce murder charges. But Martino knew Kelsey was trans from the beginning. This wasn't about discovery. This was about secrecy, control, and the violent consequences of shame. Experts who study these dynamics say it's common for trans women to experience emotional whiplash in relationships with cisgender men, men who desire them in private but reject them publicly. That secrecy can quickly mutate into violence. Shame and fear, when left unchecked, create pressure cookers of toxicity. And when the trans woman pushes for more, for visibility, for acknowledgement, for basic respect, that pressure explodes. That's what happened with Kelsey. She pushed for honesty. Martino responded with violence. Being someone's secret isn't romantic. It's a risk. A loaded weapon just waiting for the moment it's fired. Kelsey was living openly. Martino was living scared. And in that imbalance, the fuse had already been lit. After Kelsey Elem's murder, the grief didn't stay contained. It poured into the streets. In Afton and beyond, candlelight vigils were held. Kelsey's photo, confident, smiling, alive, was held high as friends, family, and strangers gathered to say her name and honour her life. They weren't just mourning her death. They were demanding that the world pay attention. LGBTQ advocacy groups responded swiftly, calling Kelsey's killing part of a long, painful pattern. Trans women, and especially black trans women, being targeted, silenced, and erased. But this violence isn't a mystery. It's systemic, it's personal, and it thrives in silence. Silence from families, from communities, from the men who claim to love trans women but can't stand to be seen with them. The conversation Kelsey's murder sparked forced uncomfortable truths into the open. Why are trans lives still seen as less worthy? Why is love a death sentence for women like Kelsey? What will it take to stop this from happening again? Online tributes flooded social media. Her name trended. People who'd never met Kelsey shared her story, demanding justice, calling out the culture that made her death possible. At vigils, speakers talked about the need for visibility, for protection, for trans women to be valued not just in death, but in life. When Kelsey's mother attended some of these vigils, standing silent in her grief, holding a photo of her daughter, letting the world see what had been taken from her. As of the time this video is being made, Martino Lewis's case is still moving through the Missouri court system. He remains in custody at St. Louis County Jail, held on charges of second-degree murder, armed criminal action, and domestic assault. Court dates have been set. Evidence is being reviewed. Witness testimony is being prepared. But for Kelsey's family, every courtroom appearance is torture. Every hearing is a reminder of what they lost. A mother burying her child. A community burying another sister. Martino has offered no public statements, no apology, no visible reflection, just silence. And in that silence, a question hangs heavy. Will there be justice for Kelsey? Will the court recognize that her life mattered? That she deserved to live openly and love freely without dying for it? Or will this become another case where the victim's identity is used against her, where being transgender is treated as somehow justifying or explaining the violence? The LGBTQ community is watching. Kelsey's family is watching. And they're demanding more than just a conviction. They're demanding that the world understand. Trans women deserve safety. They deserve love without shame. They deserve to exist without fear. Kelsey Elem deserved to be loved out loud, and she deserved to live. April 24th, 2025. Kelsey Elem, 25 years old, begged a witness to call 911. "I'm scared he's going to get his gun," she said. Seconds later, Martino Lewis shot her dead. He ran, took her car, left her bleeding, lied to cover his tracks. And now, Kelsey's family is left with nothing but grief and a fight for justice. This story isn't just about one woman's murder. It's about a culture that treats trans women as disposable. A culture that shames men into secrecy and punishes women for existing authentically. If you're in a relationship where you're kept hidden, that's not love, that's control. Secrecy isn't protection, it's danger. You deserve someone who's proud to be with you. Resources: National Domestic Violence Hotline 1-800-799-7233. Trans Lifeline 87756-58860. Kelsey Elem wanted what everyone wants: to be seen, to be valued, to be loved without shame. She deserved to live. Her story deserves to be told. And her death demands that we do better. Thanks for watching. If you haven't already, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. We cover true crime cases daily, bringing you stories that deserve to be heard. Justice for Kelsey Elem.